Hello. Today's story takes place in Oregon, located in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Oregon borders the Pacific Ocean to the west and the Rocky Mountains to the east. The region has a temperate climate and abundant forest resources. The Portland metropolitan area in northwest Oregon is the state's largest urban center, with Portland being the largest city in the state. Gresham is a city in the Portland metropolitan area, located 12 miles east of Portland. It sits at the confluence of the Sandy and Columbia rivers, where many Native Americans have lived for generations. Today's story takes place here. On Tuesday, February 5, 2002, local police received a tip-off that illegal firearms were suspected to be present at a farm in Gresham. The United States has strict gun control laws. All firearms must be registered, and the conditions for legal gun ownership are very stringent. Upon receiving the report, the police immediately obtained a search warrant. They then took the warrant to the suspected farm, intending to conduct a surprise inspection. When they arrived at the farm, the police found that the owner was not present. They presented the search warrant to the farm's female housekeeper and then proceeded to thoroughly search the premises. The farm was very large, covering an area of over 37 acres, equivalent to about 20 football fields. It was primarily a pig farm with a slaughterhouse. Next to the pig pens was a trailer used as the farm owner's living quarters. After some searching, the police did indeed find illegal firearms. Additionally, they made another unexpected discovery. The farm owner was suspected not only of illegally possessing firearms, but also of murder. The police found many women's clothes and pieces of jewelry on the farm. Looking at the sizes of these clothes, it was clear they didn't belong to the same person. The farm owner's girlfriend told the police that these clothes and jewelry didn't belong to her. She also revealed that the farm owner was currently unmarried, but often brought women to the farm overnight. Among the clothes found, some were heavily stained with blood. In the trailer, police found an asthma inhaler. They took it for testing and discovered that the DNA on it matched that of a recently missing woman. This led the police to suspect that the farm owner was involved not only in illegal firearms possession, but possibly also in a murder case. With preliminary evidence in hand, the police once again obtained a search warrant and returned to the farm the next day to conduct a thorough search to determine if the farm owner was connected to the woman's disappearance. The police discovered a set of handcuffs for a recreational vehicle in the trailer. They found DNA from 4 other women, all of whose bodies were found within a 230-foot radius of the trailer. Autopsy results showed that all 4 female victims had clear external wounds, although due to the decomposition of the bodies, only one was clearly shot. The cause of death for the other 3 couldn't be determined. The time of death for the 4 victims varied, but all had been dead for at least 3 days. 3 of the 4 bodies had been dismembered, with the cut surfaces being very smooth, similar to how animals are butchered. According to the investigation, the farm owner's name was James Lawson. Police found DNA on the handcuffs that belonged to Lawson himself. In the laundry room of the trailer, police found a .22 caliber revolver that matched the gun that had killed one of the female victims. The gun was missing 1 bullet. In fact, these 4 women were not the only recent disappearances. Since the 1980s, East Portland has been home to many non-white immigrants. In contrast to the prosperity of West Portland, East Portland was relatively chaotic and impoverished. At that time, prostitution and other social ills were almost daily occurrences there. Some women, after becoming addicted to drugs, were forced to sell their bodies to buy drugs. Recently, the Portland police had received many reports about the disappearances of prostitutes and drug addicts. Most of the missing were women. The owner of the asthma inhaler found on the farm was one of these missing women. Due to the discovery of multiple belongings and bodies of missing women on Lawson's farm, a week later, Lawson was officially arrested by the police. After being arrested, Lawson remained very calm. Because the police had found guns on the farm, he tried to plead guilty to illegal possession of firearms. However, he denied any involvement with the missing women. After a long period of interrogation, Lawson remained calm but provided no useful information to the police. Seeing this, the police decided to apply some special measures. They found a police officer who had never met Lawson, had him dress as an inmate, and placed him in the same cell as Lawson. They hoped that changing the environment might cause Lawson to reveal something. They did this, and unexpectedly, this method proved surprisingly effective. Confined in prison, Lawson was no longer as guarded as before, but completely relaxed. He regarded the undercover police officer as a friend and excitedly recounted his crimes. Lawson confessed that he lured these women to the farm in East Portland, then had sex with them in the trailer before killing them and disposing of their bodies right there on the farm. The next words Lawson said terrified his cellmate. Lawson claimed that he had killed 49 women and was just one short of reaching 50. He expressed regret for being so careless this time, allowing the police to discover him. Lawson had no idea that as he was enthusiastically recounting his crimes to his cellmate, everything was being recorded on camera. The police had confirmed Lawson as the murder suspect. 8 days after Lawson's arrest, the police had confirmed the identities of 2 women found on the farm through DNA comparison. Lawson was subsequently charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The suspect, 53-year-old James Lawson, was the second child in his family. He had an older sister named Sarah and a younger brother named Michael. The Lawson family had a multi-generational tradition of pig farming, now in its 4th generation. James's great-grandfather had bought a plot of land next to a mental hospital in Gresham and built a pig farm there in the late 1950s. Due to the government needing to build a highway, the farm's land was expropriated, forcing the Lawson family to relocate. In 1963, when James was 14, his parents bought the current farm property for $18,000, equivalent to about $170,000 in today's currency. At that time, it was still a desolate, swampy area. James's family of 4 moved there to live. They built a house, rebuilt the pig farm, and continued their livestock business. James's sister Sarah didn't live with the family. The reason was that her parents believed that girls shouldn't live on a pig farm, so they sent Sarah to live with a relative in Portland. From a young age, James had plenty of pork to eat, but his parents had to work very hard every day to handle the farm work, as the farm was the family's main source of income. His father prioritized work and didn't pay much attention to the children. When busy, he often asked James and Michael to help feed the pigs and clean the farm, but paid little attention to their personal hygiene. James and Michael often wore dirty clothes to school. Over time, they smelled of pig manure, causing their classmates to avoid them and take detours. Their classmates nicknamed them the Pig Boys. When teased by his classmates, James began to hate studying. The boy was often distracted in class, and his academic performance naturally plummeted. He was held back in 2nd grade due to failing and was transferred to a special class by the school. Both at home and at school, James received no real attention. The boy felt extremely lonely. At the age of 12, James raised a piglet. He treated it like a pet and often talked to it. Although the piglet couldn't understand, at least James had a companion. This gave the boy some comfort. 2 weeks after raising the piglet, James came home from school and couldn't find it anywhere. The boy was very worried and asked his mother if she had seen the piglet. His mother told him to check the warehouse. Then James discovered that the piglet had been slaughtered. The boy was extremely sad. From then on, James never kept pets again. When James was 14, which was also when the family moved to the current farm, he dropped out of school and worked as a butcher at a local pork shop. This continued for 7 years. At the age of 21, James quit his job and returned home to help manage the family's pig farm. 8 years after returning to the farm, James's father passed away due to illness. A year later, his mother also passed away. The 3 siblings discussed the inheritance of their parents' estate. The older sister, Sarah, inherited part of the assets and shares in the farm. The younger brother, Michael, inherited the house and a portion of the farm shares. Both of them disliked the farm, considering it very dirty and smelly. Since James had lived on the farm since childhood, the farm and pig pens were entrusted to him to manage. James didn't have his own house, so he lived in a trailer next to the farm. With the economic development of Gresham, the value of the farm increased steadily. By 1994, when James was 45 years old, the farm was worth $7.2 million, about $14 million in today's currency. 400 times its initial value. In the fall of that year, a portion of the farmland was sold to a villa development company for $1.7 million. That same year, the Gresham City government bought another part of the farmland for $1.2 million to build a park. The following year, the Gresham City government again purchased another part of the farmland for $2.3 million to build Blackburn Elementary School. Since all three siblings owned shares in the farm, the money from selling the land was divided equally among them according to their share ratios. This suddenly gave Michael a large sum of money. He moved out of the farm to live alone in Boring, 2 miles away from the farm. Although Michael had moved out, he still owned the house. Therefore, after Michael moved out, James continued to live in his trailer as before. After Michael moved out, James lived alone on the large farm. He managed the farm himself, raising pigs from piglets to adults, then slaughtering them and selling them at the market. Although the farm had traditional slaughtering equipment, it couldn't process pig entrails. James often drove to transport these entrails to a waste processing plant in downtown Portland, 19 miles away. In East Portland, James witnessed a completely different world at night. The streets were lit up with colorful lights, and many girls dressed provocatively stood on the streets soliciting customers. They were all prostitutes selling their bodies to make a living. James had contact with some of these girls. He realized that these people were often drug addicts. As long as he gave them money or drugs, they were willing to go with James. From then on, James frequently went to East Portland to lure these women back to his farm. A year after Michael left the farm, he and James registered a non-profit charitable organization called Piggy Palace Good Times Society. This organization claimed to represent various service organizations, sports groups, and other valuable groups, while coordinating and managing some special events such as dances, exhibitions, etc. In reality, this organization frequently held parties right at their farm. The two brothers provided free drinks and roast pork to attendees. However, in reality, these parties were not simply charitable activities. Their main purpose was to attract prostitutes. Thanks to the provision of free food, these parties attracted many participants, estimated at 2,000 to 3,000 people, including many members of the Hells Angels. The Hells Angels is an illegal global motorcycle club considered by the police to be a criminal organization. However, this charitable organization didn't last long. After that, James no longer used this method to find prostitutes, but switched to luring women from East Portland home. In fact, this wasn't the first time James had trouble with the law. In 1997, at the age of 48, James was charged with attempted murder. That year, a woman named Emily met James in East Portland. James used money and drugs to lure Emily. Emily agreed to go with James to the farm, but she didn't know that James had a special interest in BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism. James often required women to play the role of the abused, while he would use violence or tools to torture them. The set of handcuffs that the police found on the farm was one of these. After arriving at the trailer on the farm, James handcuffed Emily. Emily knew nothing about this. She realized James was a pervert, and if she continued, she could be harmed. So she firmly refused James's request and prepared to leave. Seeing this, James immediately blocked Emily. Emily saw a knife on the table nearby. For self-defense, she immediately grabbed the knife and stabbed towards James. However, due to the difference in physical strength, the knife was quickly taken away by James. During the struggle, James was wounded and bleeding profusely. Emily quickly escaped to the road. At that moment, a car was passing by. Emily shouted for help. The kind driver stopped and waited for her to leave the farm. During the struggle, both Emily and James were injured due to the knife. They were both taken to the same hospital for treatment. Fortunately, Emily had promptly reported to the police when she arrived at the hospital. The police found a pair of handcuffs in James's jacket pocket. The key to these handcuffs could open the handcuffs on Emily's wrist. They confiscated the clothes and rubber boots that James wore that night and kept them as evidence. James was arrested by the police and charged with attempted murder. He was later released on $2,000 bail. Because Emily was a prostitute and drug addict, her testimony was questioned for reliability. James was not punished by law for this incident. Clearly, women like Emily faced dangers not only of violence, but also to their very lives. At the end of the 20th century, many women in East Portland continued to disappear. However, because most of these women were prostitutes or drug addicts belonging to the lower classes of society, they received less attention. Moreover, these people often moved around, and no one knew whether they had really gone missing or just moved to another place to work. However, due to the increasing number of missing women with similarities, the Portland police began to realize that these were not coincidental incidents. There was a possibility that a serial killer was targeting these women. A man named Bill reported to the police that he had worked at James's farm. He believed the farm was a place to hide bodies. Bill felt that James was a quiet and eccentric person who often brought strange women home overnight. Sometimes James even had strange behaviors that made others suspect he was using drugs. Bill believed that James was a killer and might be related to the recent disappearances of many women. Receiving this tip, the police secretly monitored James. Instead of acting hastily, they believed that James frequently visited the red light district in East Portland, making him a potential suspect. However, they still didn't have enough evidence. After 2 years of investigation, the missing persons case still had no progress. 2 years after the incident with Emily, the Portland police offered a reward of $100,000, about $180,000 in today's currency, for anyone providing information related to the case. However, during this time, many women in Portland continued to disappear. Some police officers believed this was not just a series of disappearances. They put forward a brutal hypothesis. This was a serial killing case, meaning the killer might still be continuing to commit crimes. The police decided to start investigating from the prostitutes in Portland's red light district. During the investigation, a prostitute immediately recognized James in a photo and said that James had approached her a few days ago. The woman said that when she was hesitating, James suddenly became violent and threatened, "If you dare refuse, I'll beat you to death." The smile on James's face when he said this made the woman extremely frightened. She described James's smile as terrifying, as if he wanted to devour her cruelly, making her unable to refuse. However, this testimony was still not enough to prove James was related to the disappearances of women. The police needed more evidence. 2 months after the police offered the reward, the famous American TV show America's Most Wanted did a report on the missing women case in Portland. The case received widespread attention from the public. Under public pressure, the reward was increased from $100,000 to $200,000, about $360,000 in today's currency. With such a substantial reward, the police received a report stating that there was a refrigerator full of human flesh on James's farm. They went to the farm to question James, but only stood at the gate and were refused entry by James because they didn't have a search warrant. They couldn't enter to check. 2 years later, due to the continuing increase in the number of missing women, the FBI and Portland Police Department cooperated to establish a special task force dedicated to investigating the disappearances of women. The police had always suspected James, but they hadn't found a justifiable reason to search his farm. 5 months after the special task force was established, the police received a report that James was suspected of illegally possessing firearms on his farm. Although this report was not directly related to the missing women case, the police thought it was a good opportunity to search James's farm. On February 5, 2002, the police unexpectedly raided the farm to conduct a search. As expected, they not only found illegal firearms, but also discovered many belongings and bodies of missing women. This raid revealed the largest serial killing case in American history. 4 months after James was arrested, the police once again came to the farm to conduct a large-scale search. They hoped to find more traces of victims. Due to the long duration of the crimes, the victims' bodies might have decomposed into bones or been eaten by animals on the farm. There were even rumors that James had chopped up the victims' bodies, ground them up, and mixed them with pig meat from the farm to sell. Residents of Gresham were terrified when they heard these rumors. The police deployed heavy equipment to the scene, including 2 50-foot conveyor belts, to ensure they didn't miss any corners of the farm. Due to the large area of the farm, the search was very difficult and time-consuming. It took 1.5 years for the police to complete the search. They collected 60,000 samples from the scene and discovered about 80 unidentified DNA samples, including both male and female. The investigation cost $7 million, about $11 million in today's currency. Throughout the 1.5 years of searching, the police gradually identified more victims and continued to add charges against James. The police also paid attention to Emily's case from 5 years ago. They found Emily again to take her statement and collected the clothes and rubber boots that James had worn that night, which were still kept at the police station. They then discovered DNA from 2 missing women on James's clothes. 3 years after his arrest, the number of first-degree murder charges James faced had risen to 27. In January 2006, 4 years after his arrest, James was charged with murdering 27 women. The trial was held at the Oregon Supreme Court. In court, James pleaded not guilty. 2 months later, due to lack of evidence, the prosecutors withdrew 1 charge, reducing James's charges to 26. After more than half a year of trial, based on the evidence provided by both sides for each charge, the judge divided the 26 charges into 2 groups, one group of 6 charges and another group of 20 charges. Due to the government imposing a media ban on the case, some details were not fully disclosed. The judge explained that if all 26 charges were tried simultaneously, the workload for the jury would be enormous. The trial could last more than 2 years and might increase the possibility of misjudgment. Since the first 6 charges had significantly different evidence from the remaining 20 charges, the court decided to try these 6 charges first. A year later, the trial for the first 6 charges officially began. The media ban on the case was also lifted, and some details of the case were made public. In court, the prosecutor described the condition of some female victims found. The body of one woman was thrown in a garbage bag. Her blood-stained clothes were found in the trailer. The bones and teeth of another woman were found in the slaughterhouse, possibly left there by James after processing the body. Part of another woman's body was found in a garbage bin in the slaughterhouse. These details showed that James had committed the crimes brutally. The police had found a loaded .22 caliber revolver on James's farm with a dildo attached to the barrel. The gun had fired 1 bullet. James claimed that he used the dildo as a silencer when shooting pigs. In addition, the police also found some boxes of pistol ammunition, 2 bracelets, night vision goggles, and aphrodisiacs. Throughout the trial, a total of 128 witnesses testified in court. Among them was a woman named Lynn, who had worked on James's farm. She testified that one day, James drove her to Portland. Then, an unfamiliar woman got into the car. On the way back to the farm, James bought drugs and shared them with the woman. When they returned to the farm, Lynn went back to her room, while the unfamiliar woman followed James to the trailer. In the middle of the night, Lynn woke up and noticed that the light in the slaughterhouse was still on. She remembered clearly that she had turned off the slaughterhouse light in the early evening, so she went to the slaughterhouse to check. Unexpectedly, Lynn witnessed a scene that would haunt her for life. James was standing with his back to the slaughterhouse door, bent over, processing something. Then Lynn saw the body of the unfamiliar woman hanging on hooks on the wall, blood flowing everywhere. Fearing James would retaliate and kill her, Lynn didn't dare report to the police. After nearly 4 years of trial, the jury found James not guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder, but guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. The Oregon Supreme Court sentenced James to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. This is the highest punishment for second-degree murder charges. After the trial, both sides disagreed with the verdict and appealed. A 1.5 years later, the Oregon Court of Appeals issued a ruling on the defendant's appeal, rejecting the appeal and upholding the original sentence. Regarding the prosecution's appeal, the Court of Appeals found that there were some errors in the original trial process, such as incorrectly excluding some evidence and dividing the 26 charges into two groups. However, the findings and instructions of the Court of Appeals were set aside, so the results of the original trial were not overturned. One day after the Court of Appeals issued its ruling, the defendant disagreed with the decision and continued to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. A year later, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the defendant's appeal and upheld the sentence. In addition, James still had 20 other murder charges awaiting trial. However, immediately after the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling, Oregon judicial officials announced that they would not prosecute James further because additional sentences would not result in a heavier punishment for James. Moreover, trying the remaining 20 charges would consume a lot of manpower and financial resources. The Oregon government announced that the cost of investigating and trying the case had reached $102 million, about $160 million in today's currency. At this point, the investigation into the cases related to James officially concluded. In May 2013, the children of the victims filed a civil lawsuit against the Portland Police Bureau and the FBI, accusing them of failing to protect the victims. A year later, the two sides reached a settlement agreement. The children of each victim would receive $50,000 in compensation, about $65,000 in today's currency, but the police would not be held responsible. In 2016, 9 years after James was convicted, a book claiming to be James's autobiography was published. According to the book, James had given his manuscript to a fellow inmate who then sent the manuscript to Michael White, a retired construction worker, for editing and publication. The book caused much controversy immediately after its publication and was quickly pulled from distribution. Today, James is 75 years old. He has spent 17 years in prison and will continue to live the rest of his life behind bars. The case of James Lawson has closed, but the pain and trauma he left for the victims, families, and American society remain intact. The story of the pig farm killer has become a poignant reminder of the existence of evil, society's indifference to less fortunate lives, and the importance of justice, even if it comes late. While James Lawson pays for his heinous crimes behind bars, somewhere, the souls of the unfortunate women still long for release. They are the nameless victims forgotten by society, cruelly robbed of their lives. Their story is a call for empathy, compassion, and the responsibility of each individual in creating a fairer and safer society for all people, regardless of circumstances or status. The case is a difficult-to-heal scar in American history, but it is also a motivation for this country to continue improving its legal system, raising community awareness, and protecting vulnerable people from cold-blooded criminals like James Lawson. Today's video ends here, and we'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.